Streaming now, this is the Wood TV Live Desk.
And good afternoon, everyone. Phil Penarski here with the Wood TV Live Desk. Hope you're all having a great start to your Wednesday. Matt Jaworowski, News 8 digital reporter, joins us once again to discuss the final part in his digital exclusive redlining series, as well as sort of wrapping up everything that we've sort of taken a glimpse at over the past month for Black History Month. Matt, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Phil.
Yeah, no, definitely. We want to get started just jumping into this final part. The fourth part really kind of took I want to say a larger scope at the issue of redlining and maybe some other aspects that are associated with it. Could you just kind of briefly describe to the people everything that kind of went into that final part and why you decided to save it for that last part?
Yeah, so the first three pieces really had to focus on redlining, that specific practice that prevented communities of color from finding the housing that they wanted. The final piece kind of took a step back and looked at fair housing in general. The laws that we have on the books here in Michigan and both federally, how we got to this point, and then what things look like today.
Mm-hmm. And any reason in particular you kind of wanted to maybe hold off on making this the last part? Was there any sort of motivation you had behind that, or was it just sort of kind of how things went about during your research and planning for it?
Sure, I kind of felt like it was the easiest way to tell the story that way. Once we dove into all the redlining details, then we could take a step back and, having that full understanding, look at the broader picture. And I also felt like it felt good to end the series of where we are today. You know, the first three are looking back. The first two specifically focus on, you know, when redlining first became a thing from the HOLC in the 1930s. The third piece focused on the Auburn Hills saga in the 1960s. And then the fair housing story encompassed all of that and then takes us to Grand Rapids where we are today, talking about what those fair practices look like now, what those claims, how race is now not the number one claim for fair housing discrimination. And what those things look like today.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to remind everybody watching us that fourth part is now live. It went live on Sunday over on woodtv.com. You can find a link to that fourth part right now if you're watching us on Facebook in the comment section and in the description box. And you can also find a link to all of the other parts in the series. Again, this was a 4-part series that came out every single Sunday during Black History Month last month. Matt, one thing we kind of talked about it a little bit that we both found very interesting about this final piece was the idea of restrictive covenants and kind of how they've played out. And there is actually a little bit more of developments that have happened since the publishing of this article. Am I correct?
Yeah, so throughout the course of my research for these stories, which is weeks and weeks of work, restrictive covenants is one of the things I didn't really know about. I had a basic understanding of redlining. I knew of the Auburn Hills story. Obviously, as I'm doing my research, I learn a lot more and really dig into the detail. But restrictive covenants were a thing I had not heard of before. It was a practice that was popularized at the start of the 20th century, basically where homeowners could put language, attach it to the deed of their home or property, and say that this house in perpetuity cannot be sold for any number of reasons, like to a person of color or to a person of the Jewish faith or any other kind of specific details that they wanted to put in there, which is, for the time, I understand how that happened, but something that I just didn't know about. And then as far as learning about more fair housing stuff, obviously we put a lot of focus on 1968 and 1964 Civil Rights Acts, but it was really a Supreme Court case on 1948 that particularly had to deal with restrictive covenants, basically made them illegal. That kind of laid the groundwork for a lot of that fair housing law that really kind of paved the way to those equal civil rights acts of the 1960s. So that was something that really stuck out to me. And then also just this week, Sarah Anthony, a lawmaker from the state lawmaker from the Lansing area, just held an event. Allowing people to come in, bring in their old housing deeds, and have that racist language, those restrictive covenants, taken off the deeds. That's something that I don't think people are aware of, that, you know, there are houses that are over 100 years old, depending on how they've traded hands. That language can still be there, Now, obviously, it's not enforceable now because of the laws, but there are plenty of people, I'm sure, that would want to take that language off the deeds. They don't want to see that there. And now, after a law that was passed last year, there's a way to legally remove that. So I thought that was really interesting detail to see how that's still playing out today.
Right, and I guess just from your own perspective, dealing with all this research, putting together all these different stories, and then seeing it actually play out in modern times. I mean, how does that feel, really seeing, things that you've been so encompassed with and trying to work on and learn more about, and then actually seeing it happen in real life, in real time?
Right, yeah, I'm not here to take any credit for the work that's been done by any means.
Right.
But it is cool to see how that still plays a role today. Just being able to learn about our community, and a community that I'm not personally a member of, but trying to find more ways to interact and find common ground there. The research, and this is something that I try to tell people when I do some of these investigative series, is it's a long time coming. Usually between me and my supervisors, we plan these out months in advance. We kind of come up with storylines together and things that we want to follow, and then it's a lot of reading, a lot of time spent in the libraries. I know the local history team at the Grand Rapids Public Library has been a huge help. Friends because I spent so much time with them at the Grand Rapids City Archives, the MSU Extension, a lot of other places where, taking time and poring over those old materials to really bring these stories to light here in 2023.
Mm-hmm. And you kind of touched on that a little bit about just how many hours went into this entire series. Mm-hmm. Taking a look back now that the series has been completed, it wrapped up on Sunday, taking a look back now, can you kind of just touch on the importance that you saw going into it? Did that change at all to you? Maybe the things that you went in that you wanted to find out before you started researching, and then come to find out that there's all this other information that you're surprised about, or really just kind of maybe even took you back a little bit?
Yeah, I think I went into the series with the understanding of a lot of people in West Michigan may not have heard of redlining, or certainly don't know the impact that it's had on communities of color across the country. I know 2 years ago, NBC News did a really interesting feature on redlining in Detroit. And that was what first gave me the idea of, obviously, redlining was this really impactful, negative, bigoted practice. And I wanted to show that the impact was felt here in Grand Rapids as well. So you're just digging into that story, learning more about the city's black belt, how the process of redlining actually made Grand Rapids communities even more segregated than they were before that. And then the fight, where we really didn't see a lot of big traction until the 60s, the Auburn Hills development, and everything that came after that. So it's really interesting to see the smaller details in those stories that are still playing out today.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just wrapping up, Matt, is there going to be one major moment that really sticks out to you about this series that really you're just never going to be able to forget, or is it just kind of an all-encompassing series that is just going to stay with you forever?
Sure. I think if there's one thing that I would remember the most, I interviewed Cheryl Franks, who's the daughter of one of the 4 main investors in the Auburn Hills development. I remember it most because she's just a very quirky and fun and delightful person. I know I talked to her for almost an hour. Just a fun, light, even though we're dealing with difficult topics, it was a lighter conversation than the one I expected to happen. Mm-hmm. But it was just it was fun to be able to spend that time with her and learn from her, and know that she's literally just one generation removed from all of this. She still has firsthand memories of all these things happening and her life growing up in Grand Rapids in the 60s. So that's the one thing I'd probably take out of this.
All right, Matt. Well, again, we have really enjoyed you coming on the live desk over the past couple of weeks and really just talking more in depth about your series on redlining. So we really do appreciate all the extra work you've put in coming on the live desk. And, of course, that series is fantastic. Again, I encourage everybody watching, if you haven't checked out the entire series, or maybe you're missing a couple of the installments, definitely go check them out. They're all live right now over on woodtv.com. If you're watching us on Facebook, of course, you can find a link to the final part as well as the other 3 installments right now in the description box and comments section. Matt, thank you so much for being here for the last time. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Phil.
And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in to this latest edition of the Wood TV Live Desk. I'm Phil Penarski, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.